Park Taiho stood at the window of the boarding station and watched the transport ship grow larger as it moved toward the dock. The vessel was called Horizon's Edge, and it would carry him home after 3 long years on the mining colony of Kepler-44. To be 3 years of digging lithium from frozen rock, 3 years of breathing recycled air that always tasted like metal, 3 years of dreaming about Earth. He was 28 years old now. He had left Earth as a young man looking for adventure and money. He was returning as someone older and quieter, with scars on his hands and a deep tiredness in his bones. The boarding process was slow. 200 passengers filled the transport, miners like himself, scientists finishing their research contracts, and families who had tried to build lives on the edge of human space. Taiho found his small cabin on the lower deck and dropped his bag on the thin bed. The room was barely larger than a closet, but it had a window. He could see the stars. For the first 12 hours, nothing happened. Taiho ate a simple meal in the common area, slept for a while, and spent time walking the corridors of the ship. He liked to observe things. He watched the crew work. He noticed which doors required codes and which ones did not. He counted the security officers. There were only 6 for the entire ship. It was a civilian transport after all. Nobody expected trouble. The trouble came anyway. Taiho was sitting in the observation lounge when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Through the large windows, he saw something that made his stomach drop, a ship appearing from nothing. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment there was a sleek, dark vessel floating beside them like a shark that had found its prey. The other passengers began to panic. Some ran for the exits. Others stood frozen, staring at the alien ship with wide eyes. Taiho did not run, stayed in his seat and watched. The alien vessel was Valari. He recognized the design from the war documentaries he had watched as a child. The Valari were a warrior species, tall with pale blue skin and eyes like polished silver. Humans had fought them 40 years ago in a brutal conflict that killed millions on both sides. The war had ended with an uneasy peace, but the hatred remained. Within minutes, the transport shook as the Valari ship connected to their airlock. Taiho heard shouting from the corridors, then the sharp sound of weapons firing. The security officers tried to resist, but it was over quickly. For Valari females in black combat armor walked into the observation lounge. They moved like hunters, smooth, confident, and deadly. The leader stepped forward and removed her helmet. Her face was angular and beautiful in a cold way, with high cheekbones and those strange silver eyes. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "This vessel is now under our control. You will obey our commands. Anyone who resists will die." She said her name was Captain Nira. She did not explain why they were doing this or what they wanted. She simply gave orders, and her crew followed them without question. The passengers were separated by species. There were a few dozen aliens on board, traders and workers from allied races. They were moved to one section of the ship. The humans were taken to another. Taiho noticed that the Valari guards watched the humans more carefully. They kept their weapons ready as if expecting an attack at any moment. He understood why. The Valari had learned to fear humans during the war. They had been taught that humans were savage and unpredictable, capable of terrible violence. The propaganda had painted humanity as monsters. Taiho sat quietly among the other human passengers. Some were crying, others were praying. Few were angry, whispering about fighting back. Taiho said nothing. He simply watched the Valari guards and memorized their patterns. One of the guards noticed him. She was younger than the captain, with shorter hair and a scar running down her left cheek. Her silver eyes locked onto Taiho with open hostility. She walked toward him, her boots heavy on the metal floor. "You," she said. "What are you looking at?" Taiho met her gaze calmly. "Your weapon. It is a Valari pulse rifle Model 7. Accurate at medium range, but slow to recharge. You keep touching the power cell like you were worried about it." The guard stared at him, and she grabbed his arm and pulled him to his feet. "Captain needs to see this one." She dragged Taiho through the corridors to the bridge, where Captain Nira was studying the ship's navigation systems. The guard pushed Taiho forward. "This human was analyzing our equipment," the guard reported. He knows our weapons. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she walked closer, stopping just an arm's length away. What is your name, human? Park Taiho. And how do you know Valari weapons, Park Taiho? He shrugged. I read. Pay attention. Knowledge is useful. Nira tilted her head slightly. Most humans beg when they are captured, or they threaten. They make noise. She paused. You do neither. Why? Taiho considered the question. Begging will not change anything. Threatening is foolish when you have no power. So I wait and I watch. Something flickered in Nira's eyes. Interest, perhaps, or surprise. She turned to the guard with the scar. Bora, put this one in separate confinement. I want him isolated from the others. Bora grabbed Taiho's arm again, but Nira raised a hand to stop her. Bora, do not harm him. Not yet. As Bora led Taiho away from the bridge, he kept his ears open. He heard voices behind him, Nira and her other officers arguing in their own language. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. They were worried. Scared even. He caught fragments of their conversation as they switched to the common trade language. Something about their own ship. Something about damage. Something about running out of time. When they passed a window, Taiho looked out at the Valari cruiser still attached to the transport. He noticed something he had missed before. There were scorch marks along the hull. One of the engine sections was dark, showing no power. The ship was wounded. Bora shoved him into a small storage room and locked the door. Taiho sat down on a crate and thought about what he had seen and heard. The Valari had not attacked this. Transport for ransom or revenge. Their ship was damaged. They were desperate. And based on the fear he had heard in their voices, they were running from something. The question was, what could frighten a crew of Valari warriors so badly that they would risk seizing a human? Transport. Taiho leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. He had a feeling he would find out soon enough. When he did, he would need to be ready. Outside the small window of his prison, the stars moved slowly past. Somewhere in that darkness, something was hunting the hunters. And now Taiho was caught in the middle. Taiho spent 6 hours in the storage room. He counted the seconds by his heartbeat and measured the time by how often the ship's engines changed their hum. He was used to waiting. The mines had taught him patience. When the door finally opened, it was not Bora who stood there. This Valari was different, shorter than the others, with softer features and eyes that held more curiosity than hostility. She wore the uniform of an engineer, and her hands were stained with grease. My name is Dara, she said. I need to speak with you. Taiho stood up slowly. Are you here to kill me? No. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. I am here to ask for help. Taiho raised an eyebrow. You take me prisoner, and now you want my help? Dara looked uncomfortable. She glanced at the door as if worried someone might hear. What I am about to tell you is dangerous. If my captain knew I was here, she would be angry. But we have no choice. She took a deep breath and began to explain. The Valari cruiser was dying. During their escape, she used that word carefully, escape. The ship had taken heavy damage. The main reactor was failing, leaking radiation into the engineering section. Without repairs, the reactor would shut down completely within hours, and without power, they would be helpless. Why not repair it yourselves? Taiho asked. Dara's face tightened with frustration. The radiation levels are too high. Our species cannot survive that kind of exposure, not even for a few minutes. Our cells break down too quickly. She paused. But humans are different. Your bodies can tolerate radiation that would kill us. You could survive long enough to make the repairs. Taiho understood now. They needed him because humans were built to endure. It was one of the things that made his species so strange to others. Humans could survive poison, radiation, injury, and disease that would destroy most alien races. They were not the fastest or the strongest, but they were hard to kill. And if I refuse, he asked. Dara met his eyes. Then we all die. You, me, everyone on both ships. Explain. She sat down on a crate across from him. Her voice dropped lower. We are not pirates, Park Taiho. We are deserters. Our unit was ordered to attack a colony on the border, a civilian settlement with no military value. Women, children, elderly. The Dominion wanted to send a message to rebel factions. Her hands clenched into fists. Captain Nira refused the order. We all refused. Yes. So now we are traitors. Taiho listened in silence. The Dominion sent ships to hunt us down. We barely escaped, but our cruiser was damaged in the battle. We seized this transport because we were desperate. We needed supplies, time, anything to survive. Dara looked at him with pleading eyes. If our ship dies, the Dominion fleet will find us within hours. They will kill my crew for desertion, and the humans. She shook her head. The Dominion hates your species. They will take the passengers as slaves or worse. Taiho processed this information. The Valari crew were not villains. They were soldiers who had chosen to disobey an evil order. They had become criminals because they refused to murder innocents. In a strange way, they had done the right thing. If I help you, he said slowly, I have conditions. Ada nodded. Name them. The human passengers must be treated fairly. Food, water, medical care. No more threats. No more fear. I will speak to the captain. Duh. Taiho's voice was firm. You will guarantee it. If I am going to risk my life in your reactor, I need to know my people will be safe while I am gone. Dara hesitated, then nodded. I will make sure of it. I give you my word. 1 hour later, Taiho stood in the airlock between the transport and the Valari cruiser. Captain Nira had agreed to his conditions reluctantly, but she had agreed. Bora stood nearby, watching him with suspicion and something else. Perhaps confusion? She could not understand why a prisoner would volunteer for something so dangerous. Dara handed Taiho a breathing mask and a repair kit. The damage is in the secondary coolant system. I will guide you through the repairs using this communicator. She pressed a small device into his ear. You will have approximately 15 minutes before the radiation becomes dangerous, even for a human. Work quickly. 15 minutes. Taiho nodded. I have worked with worse deadlines. He entered the cruiser and made his way through the dark corridors. The ship smelled like burning metal and something chemical he could not identify. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. He could feel the wrongness of the ship. It was a vessel in pain, struggling to stay alive. The engineering section was sealed behind heavy doors. When Taiho opened them, he felt the radiation immediately, a strange warmth on his skin, a tingling in his teeth. His body recognized the danger even if his mind pushed it aside. I am inside, he reported. Dara's voice crackled in his ear. Good. Move forward. The coolant system is on your left. Taiho found the damaged pipes quickly. The problem was obvious. A section had cracked during the battle, and coolant was leaking everywhere. The radiation came from the exposed core behind it, pulsing with a sickly blue light. He worked fast. His hands moved with the skill of a man who had spent years repairing mining equipment in harsh conditions. He sealed the cracks, replaced the damaged connectors, and rerouted the coolant flow through backup lines. All while the radiation slowly cooked him from the inside. At the 10-minute mark, his vision started to blur at 12 minutes. His hands began to shake. At 14 minutes, he finished the last connection and heard the beautiful sound of the coolant system coming back to life. The reactor's angry hum softened into something stable. It is done, he said. Get out now, Dare urged. Quickly, Taiho stumbled back through the corridors. His legs felt weak, and his stomach churned with nausea. When he reached the airlock, he collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. The door opened, and Dara rushed in to help him. Behind her, Bora stood watching. The hostile guard who had dragged him to the captain now looked at him with an expression he did not expect, something close to respect. He actually did it, Bora said quietly. Dara helped Taiho to his feet. We need to get him to medical. The radiation exposure, I will be fine. Taiho's voice was weak but steady. Humans recover from this. It just takes time. Nira appeared in the doorway. She looked at Taiho, this human who had walked into death and walked back out carrying their salvation. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she gave a small nod. "You have earned your life, human, and perhaps our gratitude." Taiho managed a thin smile. "I would prefer a bed and some water." He took him to a medical bay and laid him down. As the ship's doctor worked on treating his radiation sickness, Dara sat beside him. She did not speak, but her presence was comforting somehow. Through the window, Taiho could see the stars. The Valari cruiser was alive again, but they were not safe yet. As if answering his thoughts, an alarm began to sound. Dara's face went pale. "Fight the Dominion fleet," she whispered. "They have entered the system." Taiho closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. He had just survived one impossible task. Now it seemed he would need to survive another. They had 6 hours before the enemy arrived. 6 hours to find a miracle. The war room on the Valari cruiser was small and filled with tension. Captain Nira stood at the center, studying a holographic display that showed 5 red dots moving toward their position. Each dot was a Dominion warship, fast, heavily armed. And carrying crews eager to execute traitors, Taiho sat in the corner. Still weak from the radiation but refusing to stay in the medical bay. Dara had given him medicine that helped with the nausea, and he could feel his body slowly fighting back against the poison in his cells. Humans were stubborn that way. "We cannot outrun them," Nira said. Her voice was calm, but Taiho could see the tightness around her eyes. "Our cruiser's too damaged. The transport is too slow." "Oh." Bora slammed her fist against the wall. "Then we fight. We take as many of them with us as we can. 5 warships against our crippled cruiser, and a civilian transport with no weapons?" Yuri, the young pilot, shook her head. "That is not a battle. That is a massacre." The officers argued among themselves. Some agreed with Bora, better to die fighting than surrender. Others wanted to try negotiating, though they all knew the Dominion did not negotiate with deserters. A few simply looked lost, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Taiho watched and listened. His mind worked through the problem like a puzzle, examining each piece, looking for angles that others might miss. Finally he spoke. "May I offer a suggestion?" The room went quiet. All for Valari turned to look at the human in the corner, this stranger who had saved their ship and now sat among them as something. Between prisoner and guest, Nira's eyes narrowed. "You are a cargo worker from a mining colony. What do you know about battle?" "Nothing," Taiho admitted. "I know nothing about battle, but I know about survival." Stood up slowly, his legs still unsteady. "Your people value honor and direct confrontation. You meet your enemies face to face. You fight with strength." He paused. "My people are different. We survive by being clever, by using tricks, by making our enemies believe things that were not true." "Deception," Bora said the word like it tasted bad. "That is cowardice." "That is human," Taiho replied without offense. "And it kept us alive for thousands of years against animals that were faster and stronger than us." He looked at Nira. "You cannot win a straight fight against 5 warships, but you do not need to fight them. You only need to make them go away." Nira studied him for a long moment. "Explain." Taiho walked to the holographic display and pointed at the transport ship. "This vessel will broadcast a distress signal claiming 2 emergencies, a reactor breach, and a plague outbreak. At the same time, we will release chemicals into space that Dominion sensors will read as biohazard signatures." Yuri frowned. "They will investigate. They will board us." "Yes," Taiho agreed. "So we give them something terrible to find." He outlined the rest of his plan, the fake sick passengers, the chaos, the bodies that were not really dead. A performance designed to convince the Dominion that approaching the ship meant contamination and death. "The Dominion commander will have a choice," Taiho continued. "Risk exposing her crews to an unknown plague, or let us go. Self-preservation is a powerful force, even among warriors." Silence filled the room as the Valari processed his words. Bora looked disgusted. Yuri looked intrigued. Dara watched Taiho with something like wonder in her silver eyes. Nira spoke slowly. "In our culture, such tricks are shameful. A warrior who wins through deception has not truly won." "With respect, Captain," Taiho said, "a warrior who dies with honor is still dead. Her crew is still dead. The people she was trying to protect are still dead. He met her gaze without fear. You refused to massacre civilians because you believed it was wrong. You chose morality over orders. That was brave. Now I'm asking you to choose survival over tradition. Is that really so different? The words hung in the air. Nira's jaw tightened. Taiho could see the struggle behind her eyes. A lifetime of beliefs pushing against the simple reality of their situation. Then Yuri spoke up, her young voice cutting through the silence. Honor is a luxury for the living. Everyone turned to look at the pilot. She stood straighter under their attention. I want to live. I want to see my home again. If this human has a way to make that happen, I say we try it. One by one, the others nodded. Even Bora, though she looked like she was swallowing something bitter, Nira closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was made. Very well. We will try the human way. She looked at Taiho. If this fails, we will all die. You understand this? I understand. Then let us begin. The next hours were filled with frantic preparation. Dara worked with the transport's engineers to create the chemical mixture that would fool Dominion sensors. Yuri programmed fake emergency broadcasts and spliced together audio files of screaming and alarms. Even the human passengers helped once Taiho explained the situation. They created fake wounds using medical supplies. Practiced looking sick and terrified as they worked. Bora found Taiho in one of the corridors. She stood in front of him, blocking his path, her scarred face hard to read. Human, she said. I have a question. Taiho waited. My people were taught that your species are animals, savage, violent. We were told you torture prisoners and eat your enemies. She paused. But you saved our ship at risk to yourself. Now you work to save us all, even though we took you prisoner. Her silver eyes searched his face. Why? We are not your people. We are your enemies. Taiho thought about the question. It was not simple, and he did not want to give a simple answer. During the war, humans did terrible things to your people, he said. And your people did terrible things to humans. Both sides believed they were right. Both sides believed the other was evil. He shook his head. But that war ended before I was born. I did not fight in it. You did not fight in it. The hatred we were taught is not ours. It was given to us by people who are mostly dead now. He looked at Bora directly. Right now, everyone on this ship wants the same thing. Human Valari? It does not matter. We all want to live. We all want to go home, he shrugged. That makes us the same. So why would I not help you? Bora stared at him for a long time. Something shifted in her expression. Not friendship. Not yet. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. You are a strange human, she finally said. Thank you. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she turned and walked away. An hour later, they were as ready as they would ever be. The transport was dark and filled with artificial fog. Red emergency lights flashed through the corridors. Speakers played sounds of chaos and suffering. The passengers who had volunteered to play sick lay in the hallways, covered in fake wounds and lesions. On the bridge, Nira stood beside Taiho as they watched the holographic display. The 5 red dots were close now, close enough to see the transport's distress signal. Are you ready? She asked. Taiho took a deep breath. No, but we do it anyway. The communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. A cold female voice filled the bridge. Unidentified vessels. This is Commander Veth of the Dominion 3rd Fleet. You have 30 minutes to surrender. If you do not comply, you will be destroyed. Taiho looked at Nira. She nodded. It was time to see if a human trick could fool an empire. Taiho stepped up to the communication panel and opened a channel to the Dominion fleet. He took a breath, thought about every scared and panicked person he had ever seen, and became one of them. Please, you have to help us. His voice cracked with manufactured terror. This is Quarantine Officer Park from the transport, Horizon's Edge. We have a medical emergency, a plague. It came from the mining colony. People are dying everywhere. The reactor is failing. We tried to contain it, but he let his voice break completely. Please, stay back. For your own safety, stay back. There was silence on the other end. Then Commander Veith's cold voice returned. "What is the nature of this illness?" "We do not know." Taiho made his breathing fast and ragged. "It started in the cargo hold. Fever, bleeding, then death. It spreads through the air. 30 passengers are already dead. Maybe more," added a sob for effect. "The Volari ship tried to board us, and now their crew is infected too. Please, I am begging you, keep your distance. Do not let your people near us." Another pause. On the holographic display, Taiho watched the 5 warships slow their approach. They were being cautious exactly as he had hoped. "We are detecting unusual chemical signatures from your vessel," Veth said. "Explain." Dara had done her work well. The false biohazard chemicals were fooling their sensors. "That is the contamination," Taiho said. "The plague mutates the body. When victims die, they release. I do not know the scientific term. Poison gas. Toxic residue. We have tried to vent it into space, but it keeps spreading." The communication went quiet again. Taiho imagined the conversation happening on the Dominion flagship, officers arguing. Medical staff consulted, risk assessments made. No military commander wanted to bring a plague back to her fleet. Then Veth spoke again. "We are sending a boarding party to verify your claims. If you are lying, you will be executed." Taiho felt his stomach drop, but he kept his voice desperate. "No, please. I am telling you, anyone who boards this ship will die. We are trying to save you. Prepare for boarding. This is not a request." The channel closed. Taiho turned to Nira and the others, who had been listening from behind him. "They are coming aboard." Nira's expression was grim but not surprised. "I expected this. Commander Veth is thorough. She will not take our word alone." She looked at her crew. "We proceed to the second phase. Make them believe." The next 20 minutes were organized chaos. Dara flooded the airlock corridor with chemical fog so thick that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Yuri routed the screaming audio to speakers near the entrance, creating a wall of terrifying sound. The lighting was reduced to flickering red emergency lamps that cast twisted shadows everywhere. The human passengers played their roles perfectly. They lay in the corridors, moaning and crying, covered in the fake wounds and lesions that the medical team had created. Some pretended to be dead, lying perfectly still in pools of synthetic blood. A few even managed to cough and convulse on cue. Then Bora did something that surprised everyone. "I will be one of the bodies," she said. Nira stared at her. "You would pretend to be a victim?" "A Volari warrior, lying in the dirt like prey." Bora's scarred face was hard, but her voice was steady. "The human is right. Surviving matters more than pride." She looked at Taiho briefly. "If they see a Volari among the dead, they will believe the plague affects both species. It makes the lie stronger." Nira hesitated, then nodded. "Very well." Bora lay down in the corridor. The medical team covered her face and arms with fake lesions that made her blue skin look diseased and rotting. She closed her eyes and became perfectly still. Taiho thought she looked terrifyingly real. The Dominion boarding party arrived 15 minutes later. 6 soldiers in heavy armor, carrying weapons and scanning equipment. They entered the airlock with professional caution, then stopped as the fog and chaos hit them. Taiho played his part again. He stumbled toward them, waving his arms, his face covered in fake blood. "Stay back. Stay back. It is too late for us, but you can still save yourselves." He collapsed to his knees in front of them, coughing violently. The soldiers scanned him with their equipment. The readings showed elevated toxins, elevated radiation, signs of cellular breakdown. Dara had done something clever with the chemical mixture. It produced false positives on medical scanners. "This one is infected," one soldier reported, reading multiple pathogens. Another soldier moved deeper into the corridor, stepping over the bodies. He stopped when he reached Bora. His scanner beeped urgently. "Commander, we have a Volari casualty. Same symptoms as the humans. The plague is cross-species compatible." Taiho heard the fear in the soldier's voice. A plague that could jump between species was every military commander's nightmare. Such diseases could wipe out entire fleets, entire worlds. Pull back, Commander Veth's voice crackled over the soldiers' communicators. Return to decontamination immediately. The boarding party retreated quickly, almost running. As soon as they were gone, Taiho collapsed against the wall, his heart pounding. Around him, the dead passengers began to sit up, wiping fake blood from their faces. It worked, Yuri said over the communicator. They are leaving. But the celebration was short-lived. 10 minutes later, Veth's voice filled the bridge again. I do not believe you. Taiho's blood went cold. Your performance was convincing, the commander continued. But something does not add up. The chemical signatures are too uniform. The plague spread too conveniently. And my officers report that one of the Valari corpses had a pulse that was slightly too strong for someone dying of cellular breakdown, or accursed under her breath. She had almost been perfect. I am done playing games, Veth said. We will destroy your vessels from a distance. The plague, if it exists, will burn with you. On the holographic display, the 5 warships began to move into attack formation. Weapon systems powered up, glowing hot on the sensors. Nira looked at Taiho. There was no anger in her eyes. Only the calm acceptance of someone who had faced death before. It seems your trick was not enough, human. Taiho stared at the display, his mind racing. There had to be something else, some final card to play. He thought about everything he knew about military structures, about politics, about the psychology of commanders who had to answer to superiors. Then it hit him. Ara! He said urgently. The Valari cruiser's communication system, can you make it broadcast a Dominion military code? A priority signal? Dara frowned. What kind of signal? The kind that tells them a high-ranking officer is aboard. Someone important enough that destroying this ship without verification would end the commander's career. Nira understood immediately. You want to make them think one of their own leaders is on our vessel. Exactly. Military officers protect themselves. If there is even a small chance that killing us means killing someone important, Veth will hesitate. She will need to verify. And every minute she spends verifying is another minute we have to escape. Dara was already working at the console. I can access old codes from when we were still part of the Dominion. They may be outdated, but do it, Nira ordered. 30 seconds later, the Valari cruiser began broadcasting an emergency transponder signal, one that identified the ship as carrying a Dominion Council observer on a classified mission. The effect was immediate. On the holographic display, the warships stopped their approach. Taiho could almost feel the confusion radiating from the enemy fleet. What is this? Veth's voice was sharp. That cruiser is broadcasting observer credentials. Explain yourselves. Nira took over the communication. She made her voice official and cold, like someone used to giving orders. Commander Veth, says Captain Nira. The vessel you are threatening carries a member of the High Council on a classified observation mission. Any attack on this ship will be considered an act of treason. Silence. Long, painful silence. Then Veth spoke again, uncertainty creeping into her voice. We have received no notification of any council mission in this sector. Classified means classified, Commander. Do you wish to explain to the council why you destroyed one of their observers based on suspicion? I suggest you verify through proper channels before making a decision you will regret. 8. More silence. On the display, weapon systems remained powered, but the warships did not fire. Yuri checked the navigation panel. If they wait another 40 minutes, we will reach the system boundary. We can jump to hyperspace from there. 40 minutes. They needed to maintain the lie for 40 minutes. Taiho watched the display, counting every second, waiting for Veth to see through the deception. Waiting for the weapons to fire, the fleet did not move. 30 minutes. 20 minutes. 10. Then the sensors screamed a new warning. 3 new signatures dropping out of hyperspace behind the Dominion fleet. But these were not Valari ships. They were human warships. Coalition military vessels responding to the original distress call. Taiho felt hope surge in his chest. But Nira's face went pale. We have a different problem, she said quietly. The Coalition will want to know why a Valari crew seized a human transport. and the punishment for piracy is severe. They had escaped one enemy only to face another, and this time, Taiho would need a different kind of trick entirely. The 3 coalition warships held their position behind the Dominion fleet, weapons armed and ready. Taiho could imagine the tense standoff happening between the two forces. Decades of hatred and distrust flowing through every communication channel, Commander Veth made her choice quickly. She was caught between a possible council observer on the seized transport and a fresh coalition squadron at her back. Politics won over revenge. "This is not over," her voice crackled through the communication system. "We will report this incident to the High Council. If you have lied to us, we will find you." Then the 5 Dominion warships turned and jumped to hyperspace, disappearing in flashes of blue light. The immediate threat was gone, but a new one remained. Unidentified transport and Valari vessel. This is Captain Song of the Coalition Warship Defender. We received your distress signal. What is your status? Why is a Valari cruiser attached to your ship? Nira stood frozen at the communication panel. Her crew looked equally lost. They had escaped execution by the Dominion, but now they faced the very real possibility of being arrested by the Coalition. The charges would be piracy, hostage-taking, assault on a civilian vessel. The punishment could be death or life imprisonment. Taiho stepped forward. "Let me handle this." Nira looked at him. "What are you going to do?" "What humans do best," he said. "Tell a story." He opened the communication channel before she could argue. "Captain Song, this is Park Tiho, civilian passenger on the transport Horizon's Edge. I am relieved to hear your voice." He made himself sound exhausted and grateful, which was not entirely an act. "We had a reactor emergency about 18 hours ago. Coolant system failure. We would have died if the Valari ship had not responded to our distress call." There was a pause on the other end. "You are telling me the Valari crew helped you?" "Yes, sir. They risked their own ship and crew to save us. Their engineer walked one of our passengers through repairs that were beyond our own crew's abilities. They provided medical assistance, supplies, protection when we were vulnerable." Taiho kept his voice steady and sincere. "I know our species have a difficult history, but these people acted with honor. Without them, 200 civilians would be dead." Another pause. "Longer this time?" Taiho could imagine Captain Song trying to fit this story into everything he knew about Valari. Everything he had been taught during his military training. "The Dominion fleet that just departed, they were not here to help you?" "No, sir. They arrived after the Valari crew was already assisting us." Commander Veth seemed suspicious of the situation. There were some tense moments, but she eventually withdrew. Captain Song's voice was careful. "I will need to verify this story with your passengers and crew. Of course, we have nothing to hide." The communication ended. Taiho turned to find Nira staring at him with an expression he could not read. "You lied for us," she said. "To your own military?" "Yes." "Why?" Taiho thought about the question. It was the same question Bora had asked him, and the answer had not changed. "Because you are not criminals. You are soldiers who refuse to commit murder. You chose to protect innocent lives instead of following orders." He shrugged. "Where I come from, that makes you heroes, not villains." Nira was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter than he had ever heard it. "You barely know us. We took you prisoner. We threatened your people. And still, you protect us." "People can change," Taiho said simply. "Situations can change. The person you were 18 hours ago is not the person you are now. I choose to judge you by who you are now." The coalition boarding party arrived an hour later, but this time they came as rescuers, not investigators. Captain Song had spoken with the human passengers, and every single one of them confirmed Taiho's story. Even the ones who had been terrified. Even the ones who had been angry. Even the ones who had every reason to want the Valari crew punished. Bora found Taiho as the coalition. Medics were checking on passengers. She stood in front of him, her scarred face struggling to express something unfamiliar. "The human families," she said. "The children. I threatened them when we first seized the ship. I pointed weapons at them and told them to be silent." Her voice was rough. "They spoke in our defense. Why? Taiho watched the passengers moving around them, tired, scared, but alive. A human child was being carried by her father, her small arms wrapped around his neck. She looked at Bora and did not flinch. Because people can surprise you, he said. You expected hatred. They gave you mercy. He met Bora's silver eyes. Maybe that is the most human thing of all. Not our violence, not our stubbornness, but our ability to forgive. Bora looked down at the floor. When she looked up again, something had changed in her eyes. The hostility was gone, replaced by something fragile and new. I was wrong about your species, she said quietly. We were taught that humans were monsters. But monsters do not risk their lives for strangers. Monsters do not lie to protect their enemies. She paused. You have shown me something different. Taiho nodded. And you showed me that Valari can choose conscience over orders. Maybe we have both learned something. The aftermath took several days to sort out. Captain Song reported the incident to Coalition Command. And after much debate, the Valari crew was granted provisional asylum. They were deserters who had refused to commit atrocities that carried weight, with the coalition authorities who were always looking for evidence that the Dominion was not a unified force of evil. Dada was invited to work with human engineers on a research station. She accepted eagerly, fascinated by human creativity and problem-solving methods. Yuri began training with coalition pilots. Her natural skill earning quick respect from instructors who had once viewed Valari as enemies. Even Bora found a place. She joined a mixed-species security team. Her warrior skills finally pointed at targets she could be proud to fight. On the last day before Taiho departed for Earth, Nira came to see him. They stood in the observation lounge of the transport, looking out at the stars through the same window where Taiho had first seen the Valari ship appear. I brought you something, Nira said. She held out a blade, a traditional Valari weapon, curved and elegant, with symbols carved into the handle. Taiho looked at it but did not take it. What is this? A warrior's blade. In my culture, giving such a weapon to another is the highest form of respect. It means you recognize them as an equal in honor and courage. She pressed the blade into his hands. You fought without weapons. You defeated an empire with nothing but words and cleverness. That is very human. Taiho felt the weight of the blade, the cool metal, the history it represented. Thank you. Nira almost smiled. It was strange to see on her face, like watching ice begin to melt. You saved my crew. You gave us a future we did not deserve and did not expect. I will not forget this. What will you do now? Taiho asked.